Good morning.
Good morning, Amar.
Are you all right?
Yes, good.
Happening?
Just at home today for a little while.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. And why are you at home for a little while, Jeff?
Just, I just thought I'd have a, rather than getting up and getting into work for 9, and just finished a bit late yesterday. I was very busy, so I thought I'd take it easy a little bit this morning.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Mm.
It's yeah. Gosh, I must admit, this week has been one of those weeks. I think every week you sort of say it's one of those weeks, but yeah, this week in particular feels like one of those weeks. But you're listening to Amar and
Jeff,
live on our weekly radio show right here on Spice FM.
and each week we bring some views, news, and 1 or 2 clues from the business world.
Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities.
And we'll be talking shop quite literally and not just corner shop. So they're looking to start a business, have an existing business, or you just want to talk business, we can help.
Yeah, we can. We can. Yeah. So, computer says no.
What? Computer says no to the £1 million loan that you wanted.
I was just tapping away is what I'm doing. Gosh, Jeff, it has been an incredible week. You know, I've just been looking at stuff. And even if I just think about yesterday, went from sort of delivering, oh, sorry, not quite true, supporting the part of an NHS significant organization, great organization actually, but just sort of helping them with process mapping and innovation and things like that, to dash down to your place and meet with the chief fire officer and one of the foremost tech company leaders, and then dashed from there to Bishop Auckland to meet with the MP and the Minister for Levelling Up, then dashed back for the Curry Club at the Gurdwara and left there and didn't get home till late. And you just think, that's just been one day. I'm tired thinking about it.
Well, I know that your meetings are always back to back, blocked out, and could be from one region to the other. But I guess it's probably nice to be in that position, having months and months of doing it over Zoom and things like that. It's probably nice to do the whole physical thing.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of that, but equally there's also an aspect of how inefficient some of that is. So, I mean, yesterday morning, it's crazy, right? Yesterday morning, I met some people that I'd been working with for 2 years. That was the first time
you met them in person.
And I've been working with them for 2 years. And it was like, but we were like best friends, you know, as in not quite, but it was, you know, there wasn't any, type of hesitancy, what it was just so and funnily enough, there's been a couple of occasions where, because I've met someone so many times online and you've developed a relationship and you know a lot about them, I met someone beginning of the year. I was like, all right, yeah, great. And we were talking and he's going, Amar, I've never met you, you know. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we've never ever met
in person
physically. He says, obviously I've seen you so many times, we've had so many conversations, but I've never, and I'm going, no, that doesn't sound right. As in, I'm sure I know you, as in, I'm sure we've because it was that level of familiarity. So, this argument that everything should or could be face-to-face probably isn't as important as some people think. Having said that, you can never ever replace the handshake, the physical, the sort of meeting people, and especially if there's more than one person, because what inevitably happens in a digital environment, if there's 3 or 4 people, everyone's just waiting for the chance to sort of say something, and you just don't get that opportunity sometimes, and time runs out and all of that. So anyway, here we are. So it's and traffic isn't something that I particularly enjoy.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. And it's going to get worse and worse. Imagine trying to get into any meetings in any city centre. You're going to kind of face the same issues, because the cities, they've taken, all city centres, or the government has taken a position that they just don't want any cars to enter the city centre. And unfortunately, it's not anything that we can do about. I had a meeting with the folks at NE1, which I feel have added, they've been hugely beneficial to the city centre of Newcastle. I think they're kind of more dynamic than the city councils, for sure, a little bit more entrepreneurial, and genuinely have the city centre's best interests at heart, but they have to, sometimes or often they can't do much about the city centre policies. But having chatted with them, and understanding the policies for the city and the fact that their stance on car parking, it's just really worrying, because they just want to really push the cars out of the city centre. And I don't mind, Amar, if you have to, if you have to lose some privileges where you could, for example, park on Grey Street, fine, if that's what you want to do, and if that's for the greater good, we'll accept that. But could you have, and I asked the question, I said, but surely you have allowances to cater for the car parking that's being lost in a slightly, in a different area within the city centre, whether it's a new multi-story, whatever it may be. And they didn't have those answers. So, especially in light of, the new HMRC office coming into the city centre with, 10,000 people? I mean, where are they? How are they going to get into the city?
Can you keep talking for a second?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, I can give you a little bit of an insight into the developments in the city centre, Amar, that I've got first-hand information from the chief executive of NE1. The Stack development, which has been there for about 3-4 years, a multi-use development of wineries or bars and cafes and eateries, whether it be sit down or whether it be takeaway, from jewelry shops to barbers, number of small little businesses were trading within a container development. They've announced that will come to an end, and I think it finishes on, there's about another month to go. Part of it is already being lost, and the diggers are in, because it's going to form a new development, which they have said to us that it's going to be prime retail, a lot of designer shops. I think like Burberry and Co. It'd be interesting to see whether the real big hitters decide to come and open up in Newcastle. I'm talking about the Louis Vuittons and the Chanels of the world. Are
we expecting that, Jeff? Thanks, Jeff. No, that was really good.
Sorry, Mark,
are we expecting those type of?
Yeah. Well, on the 22nd, on the 2nd of May, the Stack is getting knocked down fully, and the new development there, I can't remember the exact name. But I think it's definitely the designer. It's going to be the designer outlet of the city. I personally think we could see those things happening just because of the football and the fact that that's going to sway the decisions. Because if you imagine there's going to be a lot of Saudis and those from the Middle East visiting the city, and the influx of new players, high profile players, I think possibly we could see Chanel, we could see Louis Vuitton in those sites, which would be great for the city, because I think there is a lot of well-to-do people that have to go to Leeds and London and Edinburgh to go and find those shops. And it's going to be a multi-use development. So I think there's going to be some residential and some commercial, along with some retail. I'm not sure about restaurants and bars, but most likely there always is in those type of developments these days. So that's a huge change in the city, along with the old fire station, which is going to be a 4-star hotel. Going to be quite a cool unit because the building is beautiful. Obviously there's a huge development around 55 degrees north, where there's effectively retail and commercial and residential. And I think the old northern, is it the Northern Power Building, Northern Electrical Power Building on the corner? I think that's obviously scheduled to be knocked down, which is probably going to be the next thing. Along with that, I think they've worked very, very hard on getting the Tyne Bridge repainted tomorrow. And I was staggered at the cost of that, because it hasn't been done for such a long time. The fact is that you have to what's the word?
It's more the safety aspect as well, isn't it?
The scaffold that you need, the safety element, the processes. You have to take off all the existing paint first, get it all polished, re-rendered. There's going to be bits that are chipped and broken, but also the services that go from this side to the other. All the electrical services, they're all hidden away, that go from Newcastle side to the Gateshead side. And they all need kind of, if you want to paint, you have to make sure that you get all the technical people in and get all of that, make sure that it's all safe and secure. And that process, do you know how much it's going to cost?
How much?
£30 million.
Not crazy. It's
unbelievable. So there's that, and there's along with that, I've been working quite hard with Ernie Wanamore to try and work on, do you know the steps next to Kai Kai and Uri that lead up to the church? We've noticed lots and lots of people that come and take photographs on those steps, because it's kind of, I think it's quite very, very unique steps for the city. There isn't anything else like that. So we're trying to get them to work and really develop that with some nice new Victorian ironmongery, with possibly, post or goal posts going around from one part to the other, along with a number of floral planting enhancements, and then finishing off with some lovely sandstone or some tiling. So there's kind of a lot of interesting things that are happening in the city centre, and hopefully they'll kind of keep on improving the space, because it's really, really important, because it's the nucleus of the city, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I think seeing and feeling and realizing the importance of a city centre is critical, and that's why critical to the economic sort of growth of an area and surrounding areas. People will travel in and out and such like, but you can't make it so painful. I mean, this week, I'm sure the metros have been sort of, replaced because they're doing work on metro lines. But then there's buses trying to get people from A to B with the traffic congestion. I mean, the A1. Jeff, I don't know if you remember, but when they first started widening the A1, right, there used to be jokes, because it was like a 7-year project when they went from 2 lanes to 3 lanes.
Yeah.
Past sort of Metro Centre.
Yeah.
And then like sort of all the way through, they sort of extended the lanes. And there was a joke, an ongoing joke saying, and when eventually the A1 will be done, such and such will happen, or we'll be flying cars or whatever, as in that was a bit of a joke. And yet, throughout my lifetime now, I can probably say the A1 remains like the biggest joke ever. Who comes up with these plans to undertake work, and by the time it comes into force, it's actually worse than when it started?
What, in terms of worse, in terms of
traffic congestion?
Okay, so by making it bigger, but then they've put these 50-mile zones everywhere, though, haven't they?
Yeah.
But I mean, what's the point of having a motorway and then restricting it to 50 miles an hour?
Is it crazy?
You've just extended it to 3 lanes, and then you've effectively made it back to 2 lanes by putting a 50-mile restriction. It doesn't make any sense. It's a motorway, for God's sake.
Good. Yeah, I don't get it anyway. Crazy.
So, yes,
anyway,
urban
the
planners,
point being
urban planners.
is wherever you go, it's painful, and then the impact of that, Jeff, is it costs more to get somewhere because of fuel. So if you're stop, start, engines running, etc., and the impact on the environment is tenfold. If you imagine all of your cars are like sort of stopped on a motorway that would normally be flowing, and they're all engines, and it's like a big car park, right? The engines are all running, producing emissions. So the cost of going somewhere and the impact of going somewhere is incredible.
Well, it's and especially more so now than ever before, with the cost of fuel being so much. I mean, it's going to hit the 2-litre mark very soon. Whilst there's the Chancellor has taken it down by 5 pence. I mean, it's not here nor there, Chancellor, Mr. Chancellor. 5 pence. What we're going to do with it? The impact of, I think everyone needs to be very, very mindful of these journeys and the cost of the journeys, because it's not oh yeah, well, it's okay, but now the impact of anything, like you said, journeys and the added costs on route to somewhere because of the traffic, it's going to hit everyone a lot harder than what it ever did before.
As in, we were talking briefly about this, just the cost of everything is just crazy. What was your view of the budget, Jeff?
I was very, very disappointed because, the VAT and stuff, everything's just going. I know that we've had a bit of grace, but I think the Chancellor should have had a rethink about I mean, I'm in hospitality, so whether I'm biased or not, I think they should have definitely had a rethink about the VAT in hospitality, especially to do with food and the crisis of food around the world at this moment in time, hitting the 20%, hitting us with the VAT in hospitality going up from a 0 VAT or whatever it was, a 5% VAT to 12.5, and now back to 20. It's going to really hurt a lot of people because the costs have gone up so severely. I don't think we've had time to catch up from COVID. We needed a solid year uninterrupted, and then the government should have said, right, now we're going to hit you back with those, status quo ante on the taxes. We're going to go back to what it was, but we haven't even had a year, Amar, because if you can recall, just in December, 3 months ago, there was this whole thing about, stay at home, don't go out, either it's your family or it's a party. And it killed our Christmas reservations. And we're just getting back to our feet in business. But then the crisis has started again. And all the costs are going to increase from next week. The NI is going to go up. everyone's going to get hit. So it's going to be really, really challenging. I think a lot of restaurants, hospitality sectors have gone and making a lot of changes to their business, closing 2 days a week, closing lunches and all of those things. I'm talking about serious, well-known operators in the city that can't afford to pay electric and gas bills, and the cost of labor is far more significant than what it ever was before. Because you're looking at a minimum of £10 an hour, Amar, to employ anybody these days.
It's at least.
Mm.
Well, we were having this conversation around how much people are actually getting paid now.
Mm.
And you can cherry pick, and it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. That's the state of affairs.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really hard for organizations and businesses.
And I can't see it getting any easier. So look, we have to continue. We have to be positive. We have to, you have to go and evaluate your businesses. You have to look at every single cost, every single penny. You have to look at different ways of saving money and be creative and become more efficient, because that's the only way to survive.
As in, it's almost, there's an argument that we could do with looking at if businesses all of a sudden start to fail at the rate that they potentially could and would, the impact on that for all of us is only going to spiral costs further. As in, the thing is, Jaffa, I mean, what's funny and interesting, right? I was sort of clearing out paperwork and lofts and files and things like that. And it's when I first got a mortgage, like, whenever it was, I think the interest rate was like 7-8%. That was just normal. So we've had years of people getting accustomed to exceptionally low interest rates and low levels of inflation.
Yeah,
I think potentially we're going to see significant inflation over the next however many years.
Yeah. What percentage is inflation at the moment, Amar?
It's around about 7%.
So what, you'd be easily looking at 10-12% inflation.
Yeah. I think some people are predicting 15.
Wow.
From an economic point of view.
And then interest rates are scheduled to go up to around about 2.5% by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And that's just the Bank of England base rate. So the other banks will obviously, it'll be a lot higher than that.
Yeah, so I think on average it's between 1 to 2% above base rate on average. So you're then potentially looking at 4-5%.
Interest rate on your mortgages. So those that are fixed, you'll have it fixed for, even if it's like a 4-year fixed or whatever you've got it for. I mean, let's say you're 2.5 years into that, but when you come to renew that, there's no way you're going to get it at the rate that you have, and it's going to be significantly higher. So I think there's lots of challenges ahead. I think everyone needs to adapt their lifestyles to suit, so that you're not, stretching yourselves to the point where, you become distressed, or your finances become so distressed that it may lead to distressed sales and banks repossessing properties and things like that. I guess I could see a lot of that happening now by the end of this year, I think, if the interest rate do go up to those type of levels.
We're going to see such significant impact across the board. It's really, really worrying, really concerning. But inevitably, people are going to have to look at and consider both their lives and livelihoods, and it doesn't matter how good you are at managing money, Jaff, or budgeting or planning when you have such environmental uncertainty because of external impact. Even if you said, all right, we've got a margin of X in our profit. We've just talked about 20% there, and that's without taking into account utilities and whatever else. How many businesses can legitimately absorb a 20% hit? How many people can afford to take a 20% hit on their ability to buy stuff? I mean, on television yesterday morning, I was hearing people sort of writing in or messaging in and going, I live in the UK, and in the current, I live in one of the most developed places in the world, and I don't know whether I can afford to put money in my meter, whether I can, the people, Jeff, are refusing potatoes from food banks, right? So people are, imagine living in like what type of country do we live in where people are forced to go and ask for food?
It's just, it's
these are hard-working people with families, right? And it's got to the extent where they're not taking potatoes from food banks because of the time it takes and the energy they need to cook them. They cannot afford to cook the potatoes.
So do you think, Amar, if you look at wider macroeconomics now, and with everything that's happening in the world, and the fact that nations, I don't know why, but nations are built on debt. The America's debt is about 4 or 5 trillion, or no, 20 trillion or something on those lines. Our debt is like 2 trillion pounds or 2 trillion euros. I'm not really too sure. Every single nation is built on debt. Every single family, you're built on debt. So actually, whilst we think that we're the lives that we lead is it a bit of a false economy to begin with anyway, because we don't actually own much of the stuff because it's all debt. So if you're all indebted, that means the raise in interest rates and whatever the banks do, they really have a huge control of how we live our lives and how much money that we have left in order to be able to live our lives.
It's just crazy, right? Because it's like the impact, we're going to turn into a sort of a circle of people can't afford to live, right? People can't afford their mortgages, houses get repossessed, no one will be able to buy them. It's just going to be, honestly, it is, I must admit, I have never been as concerned as I am right now for everyone.
Yeah, and I've shared exactly the same sentiments. I think, sadly, a lot of people, I've said this in the pandemic all along. I said, oh gosh, after the country being shut down for such a long time, and it's amazing that we seem to all be okay. And I'm talking about a lot of peers, but maybe as we had the real impact of Brexit, the pandemic, and now the war in Ukraine, we're now seeing everything kind of come to a head, and the impact on all the families is going to be so significant. I think that they're probably not realizing what's going to hit them and what might hit them in another 6 months' time. And I wish that they did, because it would just mean that they could be better prepared for what's coming ahead. Whether it be you going splashing out on a new car, and then adding to your repayment plan, or going buying a new house with putting the absolute bare minimum down, and getting big mortgages, you know, you're putting yourself at so much risk.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, look, the flip side is it's not, and I hate, because this is just not me. I hate the doom and gloom side of things. There is an aspect of, you know, sort of make hay whilst the sun shines type of scenario. So, as an employer, obviously, I don't want, you know, I recognize the pains and such like that. But as an employee, if you can get paid more and you're able to, you know, improve and adjust and address some of those challenges associated with cost of living, then understand that. The thing that I sort of encourage and ask everyone to do is to see what you can legitimately reduce, you know, and see what you can save and see what you can pay off. Because the ideal scenario is to try and move away from as much debt as you can. So you're then not putting yourself at risk, is one thing. Having said that, the flip side of that is, and if I look back at my late mother, right, she had spent all of her life on a sewing machine, 18 hours a day, scrimping and saving, buying property, and had sort of £1 million worth of property, loads of pairs of flats in Benwell, and the economy crashed, recession happened, and these pairs of flats that were worth sort of, you know, each pair was worth anywhere between 100 and 150k, some 200k for a pair of flats at that time. They were compulsory purchased by the council for £500 each.
It's horrendous.
And there was nothing that she could have done about it.
I think that's
Yet, if she had a mortgage on it, if she had loans on it, then it wouldn't clearly have been as painful.
Well, I mean, that's just a really, really sad example of how, I think that's just really horrendous behavior from, it's a failure of the legal system, isn't it?
Well, it's
if
just,
there's no legal,
I mean, it's just, I mean, look, some of the challenges that are affecting us as a society, as a community right now, are those based on policy decisions that we had no control over, that have then resulted in all of this catastrophic type of impact. So, you know, of course you can't predict war, and of course you can't predict sort of the impact of, you know, energy, someone else controlling the energy. But what you could predict is, you know, and what the decisions that were made around nuclear plants and decommissioning of nuclear plants and all of this, right? And we're now going back to those plants because we realize it's the cleanest form of energy. But because we'd made those policy decisions all of those years ago, everybody's fuel has increased because we're not self-sustaining. And then we've ploughed in billions of pounds into green energy and green energy policies that have showed little, if any, return or impact, but we're all then burdened and laden with the debt.
With the cost. And I think, I mean, without going too deeply into everything, the points that you've made about one's finances, you need to, I think it's, we're kind of all in together as far as the financial mechanisms and the system. It's what it is, and everyone, it's what culturally we think that, yes, every single household is going to have a mortgage, it's normal. But there are reasons maybe now when you think about it, Amal, where certain things are prohibited in certain religions, not to do things in a particular way. And maybe it's possibly because we end up in a scenario like this, and that is not to do anything on interest, not to buy properties with a mortgage and pay big interest back, because the repayments that you're paying is horrendous. Or maybe you live within your means, you save up and see if there's an opportunity to buy a property. I know it's not possible these days, but once upon a time, not going back far, not going back hundreds and hundreds of years. If you go back 50 years, you're able to buy a property by saving your salary for 6 months. And the world has fundamentally changed. And I think it's been changed because of the bankers have changed it. The economists have changed it so that they've pushed up the prices, and everyone's reliant on a mortgage. We may be quite fortunate here in the UK because the mortgages are for 20 to 25 years, whereas in Japan, apparently, you can get mortgages for 100 years because the property prices are so expensive. And the mortgage automatically gets passed on to your son and your grandson, which I just think is absolutely ludicrous. There needs to something is not right within the global economic system, and I just feel that from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, I think there seems to be a bit of a transition.
Yeah.
And with this war, there's probably, I mean, Russia is now turned around and said to the Western countries that if you want our oil, you should rightfully pay us in rubles, because it's been traded in dollars or whatever it may be to prop up the American economy. And once the big boys start to change, I think it's going to start to put pressure on those countries where there was a bit of a false economy in many ways, because the petrodollar and things like that was propping up their dollar and propping up their economy. Mm-hmm. Once that begins to change, and Russia is now going to start to trade with China in their respective currencies, so the rubles and the yuan, if that's how you pronounce it, they're going to trade against each other. There's discussions that that India, there's a bit of pressure from the West, but they may also be doing something similar, and they're tying up Iran and Venezuela and other countries, and there's going to be a bit of a shift. And I think that economically, it's going to make the West's capitalism is going to come into play, because it seems to be on the edge at this moment in time, because the public, we're struggling, we're all struggling, and when that begins to continue at a mass level more, I think it's because the economic system has failed.
Well, look, at the end of the day, there is no question. The challenge is it's hard to write, because I do need to look at things from both views, right? It's really hard to write a policy in the middle of a vacuum when you don't know what you don't know. So it's dead easy to look back and go, well, you could have done this and you should have done this and that type of thing. So we need to take away the environmental unpredictable impacts of COVID, war, etc., 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 right? And hindsight is the best foresight. The biggest issue and challenge is the policies that are made based on politics rather than people, right? So it's like, I'm going to write a policy because I'm going to get votes. Whereas, you know, the thing for me is that leaders do the right thing, regardless of whatever. And, you know, because the one thing you're never able to do is please everyone everywhere. So as a leader, it's really important that you go, okay, this isn't going to be a popular thing right now because there's people are going to say this or whatever it is, and everyone and everywhere is always open to scrutiny in any event. but I am going to do this because it's the right thing for future generations, for people. It's the right thing that's going to take us through this, and such like. Anyway, I feel as if we've just spent all morning just like sort of moaning on. There's enough doom and gloom out there, isn't there?
Well, Amar, have you bought some Bitcoins yet?
Loads.
Have you?
Yeah.
Because the Bitcoin apparently it's, and I keep on thinking about our conversations all those years ago when we should have and talked about it and we didn't do anything about it. But I've been listening a little bit more about the significance of Bitcoin. I don't know how much it is a share. Apparently, it's like mad money these days.
Yeah, and my concern with anything as volatile or uncertain as it is going back to the doom and gloom and the cynical view to keep in line with everything that we've talked about all morning. There's if you're vested or invested in Bitcoin. So if Elon Musk says, I've bought £2 billion worth of Bitcoins, then naturally you imagine that there'll be a lot of external influence on making sure that the price and the value of Bitcoin goes up. It's a bit like shares, isn't it? If you think about it, there's all of those people who have shares in the Fsb or the Nasdaq or the whatever it is, any of the trading. If you've got the shares there, you're always going to want your shares to go up.
Of course. I mean, apparently there's rumors that who owns Bitcoin then? It's unknown, isn't it?
No, I don't think. Well, what do you mean? The people who have it?
Is there not someone that's created it, who owns it?
Yeah, so Santoshi Toshi was one of the characters, and there was, remember, we read out the whole story.
Yeah. There's like rumors saying that the Bitcoin's owned by Vladimir Putin. That'd be quite funny. If it is Vladimir Putin.
That'd be, and actually, Russia has the capacity and capability, as does China, to do something quite as significant as this.
Well, the Russians have said that if you want to buy their gas, you can pay in Bitcoins.
No, but they'd prepared. I mean, here's the thing that people are unaware of, right? And obviously we haven't talked about the war in any great depth or detail. It's interesting that narrative tends to be differently reported on both sides of the battle. On one side, it's like the Russians are being pushed back and it's the end of the world for Russia. And on the Russia side, it's like, we have all of these areas and we're ploughing on and ploughing ahead. It's just curious. In any event, the point of all of this is that Russia had prepared for certain sanctions. They probably weren't prepared for it to happen as quickly as it did happen, but they were. And there are plenty of countries who, rightly or wrongly, will continue buying energy and supplies and whatever else from them because they need it. Like, imagine, Jack. Well, okay, as an perfect example, how long are people prepared, right? If petrol goes up to £2, £2.50, £3, at what point do people start going, you know what, I can't afford this. I'd really like to get the energy from wherever it comes.
Well, of course. I mean, that's just normal mindset, and that's what's going to happen, I'm assuming. Because you can't just, I don't know how difficult or easy it is. I mean, I can only know from trying to open a restaurant tomorrow. It takes so long. Now imagine trying to change who you buy your gas from as an instant. It's not like a push of a button, is it?
No.
I mean, how does the gas come in? If it's coming in through pipes, then trying to get a new pipe from, let's say, instead of Russia to Germany, get a pipe from Japan to Germany. I mean, you're not talking, that's not really an instant turnaround, is it?
No.
You're talking a turnaround of years and years and years. So I don't really know about what the options are if Russia turn off their gas, and how we survive, or how Europe survives as a continent without Russian gas.
Yeah. Everything will eventually, and this is the thing, it falls back on just normal people, doesn't it? This is the problem, is that all of the challenges and issues experienced fall back on us.
Yeah. I mean, we just have to tie our belts and be ready for significant price hikes. Cost of living is going to be extortionate, but I think it's going to go there, never ever going to come back. So we just have to up our incomes to be able to live with the extra cost, and I think that's not going to be easy as well, and that's not going to happen as quickly as inflation is going to rise. So it's going to be challenging ahead, but I think maybe let's move on to some lighter, more positive topics. Yeah.
All right, so what's happening?
Well, we can begin with the weather. I think the weather seems to be beautiful in the day.
Yeah, let's talk about the weather.
It's cold in the evenings, Amar. It's very cold in the evenings, where by the time you leave work and stuff, you can feel the chill. But in the daytime, it's beautiful. So hopefully it's here to stay, and we can have at least we can have a bit of prolonged sunshine, which is always a big boost to how you feel.
I think from my point of view, it makes such a big difference. So we've been going through quite a stressful few weeks generally, sort of with a variety of challenges, as is everyone. But it was nice. Last week we went down to, and I thought I would have seen you. We went to the Holy Festival at the Baltic. It was fantastic.
Yes.
It was such good fun, and everyone just threw paint on each other. The Lord Mayor of Gateshead and the Lord Mayor of Newcastle, they were there in their suits and chains and all dressed up, and they just got stuck in. And it was like, and the kids had so much fun. Anyway, it was just nice, and the weather made the biggest difference ever. That was so nice. And then, it was like when you look outside and the sun's shining and people feel better for it, and you just generally and genuinely, feel better for it. So it's great. What else? So the Curry Club last night at the Gurdwara, they hosted it, and it was wonderful. The Gurdwara is such a beautiful building, and the Sikhs, are Punjabis, and I compare them to sort of Jodis, and as in the really happy, passionate, positive people. So that was really, really nice. And on Monday, I was at the Fsb Awards. So there's a lot more events going on and ceremonies and things like that, which is wonderful to see. And we were at the, as I say, the awards ceremony, where it was wonderful to see and recognise so many businesses, from small businesses from across the northeast. They're sort of punching above their weight and doing so much, and I love that. I think it's fantastic, because it it just demonstrates. And whilst we've talked about all of the pains, it just demonstrates how many people are marching on and making a difference and growing. And actually, the businesses that I'm supporting Jeff, a vast majority of them are all sort of on this growth trajectory. You know, all of the programs that we deliver, they are accelerator programs, they're scale programs, they're investor readiness programs. So all of these programs are based on how do I take my business from here or my organization from here to there, and what support do I need and what type of things do I need to have in place and all of that. And part of that is being more resilient. So we talk about the ability to sort of get through the storm. And the way you do that is make sure that you're in a vessel which is as safe, secure, solid as it can be. And that's the same thing for your business. If it's health, if it's fit, if it's sort of wealthy, sort of focused, it's lean, well, you're gonna, be able to charge ahead and compete. It's those businesses that have a lot of fat, sort of a lot of waste and inefficiency that can't tell you what their profit margins and what their what are their each line item costs and whatever else. They're the ones who are going to struggle.
Yeah.
So the future is bright, Jaff. If you look out the window for the rest of today, what's happened to the football, Jaff? Now that we're talking about doom and gloom.
Well, we've lost 2 games on the trot. They were both.
What?
We shouldn't have lost.
Minutes.
I mean, we were unfortunate.
Minutes, John.
We were unfortunate. Yeah, we were unfortunate against Chelsea. They should have had a player sent off, and we should have had a penalty, Stonewall penalty, and we should have got a draw out of Chelsea at least. And then against Everton, it was just a game where it was a horrible game. Everton came out to become spoilers and just hang in there till the end and try and nick a goal. And that's exactly what they did. So credit to them. And we should have maybe got a hold of the game a lot better, and we didn't. But we have had a lot of injuries as well, Amar, because, with Kieran Trippier being out and Callum Wilson, 2 big players, then we've had Shelby's been out, Joe Willock's been out, Joe Lintel he was out, and so was St. Maximum. So there's been a bit of disruption. They're all in Dubai at the moment, freshening themselves up, getting some hot weather training in at a world-renowned training center, where they have lots of amazing recovery machines and stuff like that. Something that we'll hopefully eventually have ourselves. So I think the break did us really good last time when they went to Saudi Arabia. And hopefully this break will do the same. I think they return probably next week, and our next game is against Tottenham away, and I think it's on the Sunday, obviously not this Sunday, next Sunday. So it's about 10 days away, the next game. And then after that, we've got 3 home games. I think we've just got to win a couple more games, and then we're safe. And I think we plan for next year, and that's going to be the exciting part. I think there's going to be a lot of amazing developments in the summer in terms of players, and they'll really build and strengthen the team. And I think they'll do things in the right way. So I think we've got a lot to be positive about.
Which is good. And on Tuesday, Jeff, I don't know if you've been around there, but on Tuesday, the Murray House refurbishment is sort of official. So the official opening on Tuesday of new Castle Murray House refurbishment.
And is that done? Is it done by the Newcastle Foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, Newcastle United Foundation. So they have created this place and space, which for me is really attractive.
Well, I spent many years growing up, going to Murray House, was part of our youth development. Murray House Youth Centre it was called, and and the current Mayor Habibur Rahman, along with Amit and Yusuf and others, Junaid, they did their bit to provide that facility for us. It was part of our upbringing, Amar. Going from the west end of Newcastle, through past that horrible pub, which is now Jangi's restaurant, going around that area, and going through the industrial estates and being chased by dogs and being chased by men, you know, and getting all this racist abuse, but it made us a lot bigger and stronger for it. So it would be great to maybe pop in and visit that one day.
Yeah, no, definitely. And reminisce. I think we'll hold a curry club or something like that at the venue at the right time and get all of the reminiscing done. Anyway, we're coming up to the end of the show, Jeff. Apologies to our listeners that it wasn't as upbeat as it always is, but sometimes you have to recognize and appreciate the downs to appreciate the ups. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Have a lovely weekend.
All right, thank you. Okay, bye everyone. I'm just waiting for Spice FM to kick in and finish. It's usually 10:59, but it does. But anyway, you've been listening to Amar and Joe live on our show, and we'll be back next week. Farewell.